everyone, and welcome to Prune Belly Insiders. I'm your host, Michael Adams, and today we have a special guest. We have another Prune Belly survivor and a good friend of mine. Please welcome Kurt Walker.
How you doing, folks?
Good. How are you doing today, Kurt?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, so why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. So I am 55 years old. I was born in February of 1967. And it was probably just a few weeks after I was born. My mother had determined that something was wrong, and she went to the local town doctor, and he said, bring him up to Children's Hospital in Boston. From there, from 1967 to 1972, I was in and out of the hospital a lot, many surgeries. And the upshot of that was that in 1972, they connected one ureter tube to the other, brought the other ureter tube to the surface, attached a small, what's called ileoloop, part of my small intestine, to the end of the ureter tube, brought it to the surface. And I've had a urostomy since then, since 1972.
Okay.
Let's see, I have, as far as whatever else about me, let's see, I have 20-year-old twins, Benjamin and Madeline. They were born they are mine, but they were born via in vitro fertilization, because as you know, that's having children naturally is sometimes an issue for PBS patients. And so I live in southern New Hampshire. I'm originally from Massachusetts, southeastern Massachusetts, and I am a second career pastor. I went to seminary in 2006, graduated, and serve a church here as part of what's the denomination is the United Church of Christ, an ordained pastor.
Okay. Now, backing up a little bit, you said you had gone to Boston Children's?
Yes. Yep.
One of the best children's hospitals in the country, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what was it a good experience, bad experience, moderate experience? What was your experience with Boston?
My experience with Boston was amazing. I mean, I don't remember a lot of it, obviously, but what my mother tells me, it was a positive experience in that they just kept trying to figure out how they were going to get me to survive and have a long a life as possible. It was such a positive experience that in 1997, I ended up getting a job at Children's Hospital as an IT, as a network administrator for the cardiovascular department. The interesting kind of full circle story about that is the cardiovascular department, the intensive care unit, was dedicated to the surgeon who I had in 1967. His name is Dr. Robert Gross. He's the father of pediatric cardiology. But by the time I came around in 1967, he was the chief of surgery. And in those days, the chief of surgery didn't matter what his specialty was. The chief of surgery got to do whatever he wanted to do. And as I understand the story is that Dr. Gross basically said he thought he could save this kid, meaning me, and he did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you said you were a pastor. What kind of prompted you to go into that career?
Oh, that's a very long answer to that, much longer than we have today, Michael. But I had been a churchgoer my whole life. Like a lot of other PBS folks that I know, somehow we get it into music and singing and performing. Frank Walker and I are dear friends. And so my first relationship to God was through music, through church. And I had been discerning or thinking about seminary since I had graduated as an undergrad in the late 1980s, and finally felt that call strong enough in 2006. And we sold our house with my then wife, and the twins were 4 at the time, and we moved on campus. And I've been a church minister with an ordained church minister since 2010.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, what was it like growing up with Prune Belly?
That's a excellent question, Michael. So coming from the perspective of what my parents, and I think this is probably true for many of our parents, my parents were told first, we'll be lucky if he's able to survive 2 weeks, then 2 months, then 2 years. And we all know the statistics about those statistics regarding those first 2 years of life. And once I made it past the first 2 years, and the doctors started to figure out, okay, there's things that we can do to help him survive a longer life. My parents were told he's not going to be able to play any sports. He's not going to be able to ride a bike because of his lack of abdominal muscles. He's not going to be able to stand up straight without the assistance of walls or excuse me, or a walker. And that just ended up not playing itself out that way. I ended up having a relatively normal childhood. I missed a lot of school in that first year of kindergarten and first grade. So I ended up repeating because of the hospitalizations. I ended up repeating my first year. But my childhood was relatively normal. I played soccer, which is a actual full contact sport. Broke some fingers, broke my nose a couple times playing soccer, and did that through high school. And rode a bike and jogged and hiked and did all of those things. Kept myself as active as I possibly could. And really, the only limitations that were put on me was I was blessed that my mom, my parents essentially said, we're not going to put any limitations on you. Whatever it is that you feel as though you can do and want to do, try. And if you feel as though you can't do it, well, that's something that you decide, not that we decide for you. So there were times that I would come off the soccer field and my urostomy bag that I've had since I was 5 would be filled with blood, which means that the urine, the kidneys had been damaged. And that worried my mom, but there was never any pain associated with that. And the kidneys would heal and the blood would go away and everything would be fine. But my childhood was relatively normal.
All right. And were there any bullies growing up?
Sometimes I was so I'm 6'1". Now I'm way too heavy, like about 270. But when I was a kid, I happened to sprout early. And so in middle school and high school, I was about 6 feet tall, 6'1". And back in those days, probably about 186, 185, 190. And I worked out. So even with the lack of abdominal muscles, I was able to work on my legs and my arms and my shoulders and my chest and things like that. So the only bullying, I never got explicit bullying. Sometimes I was asked, what do I have in my pocket? Because I have a urostomy. The urostomy is on my right side, and it hangs essentially where that right side pocket would be on somebody's pants, right? So if the urostomy were full, sometimes I'd get asked, what do you have in your pocket? Sometimes I remember being searched by teachers in school, thinking that I had a bag of weed on me or something like that. And I didn't mean to embarrass them, but essentially I would say to them, no, that's a urostomy. And there were a couple times that they would ask, they wouldn't ask, but I would show it to them. And that pretty much ended that conversation. They never really asked me again. But bullying was not something I had to deal with on a regular basis. No.
Okay. And did you have many friends growing up? Close friends?
I did. I was blessed to have many friends in school as I was growing up. I think that it helped that I was in a small town, and my family owned a small business in the center of town. So everybody pretty much knew everybody. And I did play sports. And I was active in church and active in the choir. So I did have friends. And some of those friends are still my friends today. As time goes on, of course, 55 years old, some of those friends I haven't heard from in years. But when we do come in contact with one another, of course, we pick up right where we left off.
All right. Now, would you say you had any depression, anxiety, or anything along those lines growing up with Prune Belly?
There were times that I struggled, wondering why it is that I had this. There was something that all of us in our generation, and I think Frank and others will tell you this as well, for most of our childhood, our parents and then our parents would tell us, they would lead us to believe that we were the first or only child to have survived with Prune Belly Syndrome. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
Of course, in hindsight, it seems so absurd, especially where Prune Belly Syndrome is now on 5 continents with over, 10 or 12,000 members. But back in the day, all of us were walking around pretty much solo, thinking that there was nobody else on the face of the planet that had been born with Prune Belly Syndrome. So as we matured and got older and our brains started to work differently as adults, we realized that how could that possibly be? There are 7 billion people on the planet. How is it possible that I am the only one that has ever survived in the history of humanity with Prune Belly Syndrome? That cannot be the case. I mean, I know I'm special, but I'm not that special, right? So God bless the internet and social media. Before the days of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that, there were support. I can't even remember what they used to call them, but groups of folks that would find one another online and create a support group. And so my ex-wife and I were investigating how to get pregnant, wondering why we weren't getting pregnant. So we went to some doctors, and I started doing some research about Prune Belly Syndrome and parenting and having and conceiving children. And I stumbled upon the Prune Belly Network's PBSN, Prune Belly Syndrome Network. At the time, Frank was a member, and there were Lynn was a member, Lynn Brocus was a member, and there were Anne Grau was a member. There were maybe like 15 of us. And first, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that there were other people, and they'd actually organized into a support group. So I got connected. And once I got connected, I almost immediately was told, and this is no fault of anybody's, it was just based on their own experience, that if you have Prune Belly Syndrome, you're never going to be able to have a child. So I actually backed away from the support group for a while because it freaked me out. And I was like, no, there's got to be a way. So I had some consultations with some of my surgeons that were still alive and at Children's. I happened to actually get the job at Children's right around the same time. So I had access to their offices. I could just go to their offices and introduce myself. And all of them, to a person, to their credit, said, this is ridiculous. There's nothing to prevent you from having a child. If anything, it's because it's a result of the scar tissue. Now, I did have undescended testicles, and those were brought down. But I think my issue is that there was a problem getting from point A to point B because of the scar tissue that was surrounding my scrotal area, right, and my testicles and my lower abdomen. So what I ended up doing was having a testicular biopsy. And long story short is they actually did find sperm. They extracted the sperm, froze it, and we ended up having twins. I'm not sure. Now I don't know what the original question was, Michael.
So, how would you say having Prune Belly has helped you grow as a person?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So I this has been actually this is really a core belief of my theology as well. My understanding of myself in relationship to God, my understanding of myself in relationship to other people as well, is that I am not defined by my limitations. That even though I have limitations, I am not defined by those limitations. Even though I have, and I live, my chronic issue with Prune Belly Syndrome is kidney infections and loss of kidney function, which will eventually lead to me needing to have a kidney transplant. First, probably dialysis, and then a kidney transplant. And I do live by medication. If I was not on medication, I live on antibiotics. And if I were not on those antibiotics, within 3 weeks, I wouldn't be here. So how it has helped me as a person is to understand that other people who have other diseases and have other illnesses that might be more visible than Prune Belly Syndrome. Because for me, Prune Belly Syndrome, and I know the prognostic scale is very wide for us, but for me, Prune Belly Syndrome is mostly a hidden disability. And so it helps me look at people with a different lens, through a different lens, and it helps me to understand that all of us are struggling with things that most of us don't know anything about. And so that helps me relate with people who may or may not have hidden disabilities. A lot of us do, as it turns out. A lot of society does. And even those who have visible disabilities, it helps me to empathize with them, I think, and to understand where they're coming from and their limitations and how they view the world, and how they transcend and transform and power through their life despite Prune Belly Syndrome.
Yeah. So, have you watched any of the videos on my channel?
I did. I watched a couple of them. I watched Faith, who I know very well, and I watched Frank's, and I think I watched your mom, and which was nice because I could hear a lot of my mother in your mother because, of course, they have shared experiences of having a child with Prune Belly Syndrome, and I was able to, I think, watch the latest one you had. I can't remember his name, but yeah.
All right. So the reason I was asking is because one of the videos I uploaded back when I first made the channel kind of coincides with what you said, by way of link in description below. It was saying not to let the limitations people place on you limit your ability.
That's right. Define who you are. That's right.
Because unfortunately, and this ain't being mean or condescending or anything like that, but unfortunately, nobody knows everything.
That's right.
The only one who knows everything, unfortunately, is God.
That's right.
And we probably won't know those answers till we get with him.
Maybe.
So that's the favorite quote I always use is, you never know how strong you can be until you have no choice but to be strong.
Yes. That's good.
So,
well, Michael,
going off of that, what advice would you give a prune belly who feels the opposite, feels defeated and like, why am I going through this? I can't go on, and is thinking about ultimately ending it?
Right. I mean, first of all, the very first thing I would say is, if you are suffering from depression and anxiety in a way that is disabling to you, is a way that is affecting your functionality as a person in life, the very first thing I would say is seek therapy. Seek therapy. Therapy, I think everybody should be in therapy at least once in their life. It's the best if you have insurance, it's the best $25 you can spend a month, because therapists do help with that. And whether that be a psychiatrist who can prescribe medication, or a clinical counselor who can just listen and help guide a person through their depression and their anxiety. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is seek support, right? Find something like Prune Belly Syndrome Network. Connect with other people who are going through the same thing or similar things that you're going through. We all know as adults, if we've lived long enough, we know that one of the most powerful things we can do as individuals who are struggling through whatever it is that we're struggling through is to find other people who are also struggling through the same thing, whether that be depression and anxiety as a result of a multitude of things. Find people who are also struggling so that you know that you're not alone. That's so important. Isolation is so limiting and so damaging. So it's important for us, I think, to seek each other out and do that by whatever means you can. So therapy, seeking support through colleagues and through folks who are suffering the same thing. And also, so with that, I would say through those things, my prayer would be that each of us would come to a place where we are, again, not defined by our limitations or the things that are happening to us, but to allow those things to strengthen us and to understand that we in Prune Belly Syndrome Network and folks who are struggling with all sorts of disabilities all over the world, come to a place where they recognize that they are good enough, that they are precious and worthy, and that whatever it is that they're going through does not change the fact that they are still loved and precious and worthy, and free to do what it is that they want to do.
Yeah. And just a story to back that up a little bit is in 2016, I went through a major surgery that kind of caused a lot of depression and pain and anxiety and so on and so forth. But about, I'd say, a year into it, I was feeling so defeated. I had no clue why I was even still here. And I'd met the Prune Belly Network. And 2 months later, I don't really talk on it. I go on there, I look at the posts because I'm a little bit of the shy type with that. But I saw this one kid. He was going to make a video of all the survivors telling a short description of what they've been through.
Yep.
I message him and he says, yeah, and we get to know each other. Do you have PlayStation? Yeah, I go play with him on that a little bit. His aunt comes in, a couple of his friends. So I have all these friends, and I'm telling you, that was better than therapy for me, only because having friends you can talk and vent to can mean the world to someone.
Absolutely. And it helps us carry each other's baggage, right?
Yeah.
And this is important, though, to also say, is that it can be detrimental for us to dump our baggage into somebody else's backyard or into somebody else's head or heart. It can be detrimental if we then make them responsible for our healing.
Yeah.
Right? So many times on social media, I hear stories about kids who say, if you hang up the phone or if you stop the texting conversation with me, then I'm going to hurt myself. And that puts the onus and responsibility on the other person. And usually that person is also a young person, 12, 13 years old. And they're not responsible for what somebody else does, regardless of what that other person says. So when I say carry each other's baggage, I mean in a healthy way, right? Like I'll hear your story, you hear my story. And when we hear each other's stories, while we're hearing each other's stories, we connect, right?
Yep.
We recognize that we're not alone, that there's somebody else, there is at least one other person in the world who knows what I'm going through, and I know what they're going through. And so now, when we walk through this journey called Prune Belly Syndrome, living with Prune Belly Syndrome, we do it together and not alone. So important. So important.
Yep. Which is part of the reason, I don't know if you've seen it, but I also give my personal phone number out on this channel as well for that specific reason.
Nice.
Because, like I said, I've been there. I've been the one wondering why I was going through it and having no one to talk to. And then when those people did come along, it was a miracle in itself.
Exactly. It is a miracle. And that's, I don't use that as an ordained minister. I do not use that word lightly. There are miracles that we read about in scripture, and there's miracles that we might see, stories that very dramatic and transformative stories that we might hear about in movies or whatever, and that's fine and good. But I think there are also miracles of just connecting, right? Of building relationships with each other and recognizing that we're not alone. That is such a gift and such a miracle that we can give to one another. And so I thank you, Michael, for kind of picking up the torch of this next generation and doing the same work that folks like Frank and Lynn and myself and Ann have been doing for the last 30 years. So it's really good to see you doing this.
Thank you. So what would you say are the 3 biggest pros and the 3 biggest cons of Prune Belly?
All right. The 3 biggest pros. All right. Well, the 3 biggest pros of having Prune Belly Syndrome. One, I think, is it helps me take life a little slower. I have to be intentional. When I go to the bathroom, there's a routine. I have a urostomy, so I don't have a catheter. And I know many of you younger folks have catheters. I don't have to catheterize, but I do have this ostomy. So I have to change my ostomy equipment. I have to make sure that it's clean. I have a drainage bottle at nighttime, so I don't have to go up and empty the bag several times a night. So it helps me live a little more intentionally about how it is that I go about caring for myself. I think that's a pro. I don't think I think that's a positive thing. One is this thing that I talked about earlier, which is seeing the world through a certain lens. I think that having Prune Belly Syndrome has allowed me to be more empathetic to other folks who are struggling with other things as well as Prune Belly Syndrome. I think that's a tremendous gift, if you will, that is gifted to us, that we have the ability to be able to see people in a different way when we recognize that they may also be struggling through things that we can or cannot necessarily see. That's a good thing. The third thing is, well, I might need to stop at 2. I'm not sure about the third thing. The third thing, I guess, would be the upshot of having Prune Belly Syndrome has allowed me to build relationships with other people who have Prune Belly Syndrome. And that has been, over the last 20 plus years, 25 years, has been a tremendous blessing to me. I did not meet another person with Prune Belly Syndrome. It was Dan Brokus until I was 36 years old, I think. And then I started going to the conventions, and that has been a tremendous gift. So, if you will, having Prune Belly Syndrome in and of itself has been a blessing, in that I've been able to meet people that otherwise I would have never met, whose lives I would not know about if I did not have the disease. Cons, it's a pain in the ass having durable medical equipment attached to your body. It becomes, I have to be, the way I wear my pants and where I wear a belt for my pants, how I sit in the car. Seat belts are now mandatory in most states. Funny thing is, seat belts are mandatory in every single state except for New Hampshire, which I just found out a couple of weeks ago, which is really weird. So, but here's the thing about somebody who has a urostomy, who has durable medical equipment. Maybe somebody has a colostomy, right? Is that seat belt goes right across the ostomy, and it pinches where, if there's constantly urine coming out of the ureter tube, obviously, that can cause a problem. I could start to have a leak while I'm driving. So mandatory seatbelts are a pain in the ass for people who have ostomies. I have to always have an ostomy in my briefcase or in the office, in case, I'm out and I'm going to be out for a while. I have one in my glove box, my car. So it can be it can be tiring sometimes, constantly having to think about how long am I going to be out? How long am I going on vacation? Do I have enough meds to go on vacation? Do I have enough ostomies to go on vacation? Some of the other cons. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm asymptomatic with the exception of thanks to the medication I take, but my kidneys are slowing down. I'm currently, one kidney is basically not functioning at all. The other kidney is at about 35%. And it is, I know that is going to be part of my future is going to have another surgery to have a kidney replaced. I tease my kids, that one of them are going to have to give up one of their kidneys, but and they both have agreed, so that's good. So I'll let them flip a coin or something like that. But so it's kind of a con to realize that there's still medical work that I have to do. There's still going to be biological things that I'm going to have to be concerned about as I age. I know Frank has struggled with some things that he didn't have to struggle with when he was younger. That's true for me as well. And part of it is, to be quite honest to me and to confess, part of it is taking better care of myself, eating the right foods, exercising as much as I'm able, things like that. Another con, I mean, it's basically kind of like everyday life stuff that now, after 55 years, I don't really put a lot of thought into. It just is what it is. But it obviously is different than somebody who can just get dressed in the morning and not worry about what they're wearing, how they're wearing it, how long they're going to be out, so on and so forth.
All right. Now, this is kind of a similar question. And if you're okay with answering it, what is your favorite memory and your least favorite memory involving Prune Belly Syndrome?
Wow. Involving Prune Belly Syndrome directly. My favorite memory would have to be connecting with this group and connecting with Dan and meeting Lynn and meeting Frank and Ann and Mason and I think about Dan Mason and his mom and his family. It was just tremendously powerful. I keep coming back to this theme. Tremendously powerful to know that you're not the only one that has this and that there are other people in the world who are struggling with it. That is a huge, huge weight off of our shoulders when you realize, oh, there are other people dealing with the same thing. Similar to that, I would have to say that because of where I am and because of the blessing of having our children, Benjamin and Madeline, I have received, happens about twice a year, pretty consistently, twice a year over the last 20 years. I get contacted because my phone number is also on my Facebook page, and I do that specifically for Prune Belly folks. Is that I get contacted by young couples. One of usually the male, has Prune Belly Syndrome, and they've just gotten married and they're looking to have kids. And so they want to talk to me about what that process was. I think that is something that makes me feel really, really good. If I can just talk to them and listen and try to answer their questions and encourage them to continue to pursue the dream of being a parent, regardless of what they're hearing from the medical community. That makes me feel really good. Worst memories of having Prune Belly Syndrome. Actually, it turns out that it was false, but my worst memory, my worst moment of having Prune Belly Syndrome is when I was told, my wife and I at the time and I were told, there is absolutely no way in a million years that you are ever going to be able to have children. It is not possible. Don't even think about it. And he was he was a Harvard educated physician in Boston. And I took that to heart. for several months before I kind of shook myself out of it and kind of regained my consciousness and realized there's got to be a way. And here's the other thing I want to say too. There's got to be a way, even if it's not mine, right? Like obviously I can adopt, I can foster, we can do all of those things too. But I just didn't take no for an answer. Although I took no for an answer for a few months, and that was pretty rough. That was pretty rough. That was a bad time.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes when people say you can't do it and that's all you hear, it gets hard to fight through it. But
right.
Sometimes perseverance pays off.
That is right. And one of the gifts I think of having Prune Belly Syndrome, I know in my life, has been this kind of mantra that I have taken with me since I can remember, and that is this kind of rhetorical question: "Tell me what I can't do. Tell me what I can't do." Right? Because people have told me that I wasn't going to live 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. People told me I wasn't going to be able to ride a bike or play sports or stand up straight. Tell me what I can't do. That's what I just keep saying, So when I am approached by, and it's still not as often as was the case when I was younger, but when I am confronted with somebody who tells me that I couldn't possibly do something because of Prune Belly Syndrome, because of my condition, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where I say, tell me what I can't do. Better yet, write it down on a piece of paper so I can put it in my pocket so that it will motivate me to make sure that I do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't take discouragers lightly, I take them very seriously. And I take it very seriously when I feel as though I have been discouraged from doing something that I know in my heart and in my mind, Prune Belly is not going to limit me from doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only thing that limits someone is themselves.
That's right. That's true. Yep.
So, what advice would you give a parent who's a mother who's still pregnant with Prune Belly?
Excellent question. I know this was the case when we made the video in 2007. I was still getting phone calls and I don't know. It's funny, as I age, I'm not as connected with the group as I used to be. In that I'm not going on Facebook all the time and checking folks out. So I don't know what those active conversations are happening on the news feed, but I know in 2007 when we made the video, we still were seeing a lot of moms who were finding us on Facebook. Of course, Facebook was only 3 years old at the time. We had moms who were finding us post pregnancy, so they were finding us after they had aborted their child. And I should say right up front that I am pro-choice. I mean, that is between a woman and God. It's her body. She gets to do what she wants to do with her body. No government, no individual should get in the way of that. That is between them and God. And I would say it is also really, really heartbreaking when moms or pregnant women who were pregnant with a Prune Belly Syndrome child, because now it can be diagnosed in utero, when they come to us and they find Facebook afterwards, they find out that there are people like me and Frank who are 55 years old. There were folks that were before us who are now probably in their 70s and 80s if they're still alive. And I think that's heartbreaking for moms. So if you're pregnant and you've been diagnosed and your baby has been diagnosed with Prune Belly Syndrome in utero, and you've been told that child is not going to have a life, or is going to be born stillborn, conceived stillborn, or if any of that is true, go to another doctor. Get a second opinion. Find out more about Prune Belly Syndrome. Learn more about the statistics of how many of us have survived and what it is that we're able to do in our lives, right? We're able to have professional careers. I have an advanced master's degree, right? In Masters of Divinity. We're able to play sports, some of us. And I know the prognostic scale is very wide. But if you've been told under no circumstances can you have this child, get a second opinion. learn a little bit about what is going on here in this community.
Which is part of the reason I started this channel too, because this gives parents an inside view from A, other parents,
That's
B,
right.
doctors, and C, I'm not going to say most important because it's not, but arguably a very important vital role. They're getting it from people with Prune Belly Syndrome.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes to community. And I don't know currently what the knowledge or awareness is within the clinical community regarding Prune Belly Syndrome. I'm going to assume that when somebody graduates from medical school and they've gone and they've done their residency, and even if they've done a post-residency fellowship in urology or nephrology, the chances are that they have not come across a patient who has Prune Belly Syndrome. In gynecological circles, it's probable that most OBGYNs have not come across an in utero child who has been diagnosed with Prune Belly Syndrome. So seek clinicians if you know that your clinician knows absolutely nothing about Prune Belly Syndrome, and that's not to fault them. It's just to say that it's very, very rare, right? We know the statistics: 1 in 40,000 live births, 50% fatality within the first within in utero, 50% fatality within the first 2 years. That makes 1 in 160,000 people who live past the age of 2, right? Very, very rare. So it makes sense that clinicians would have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to Prune Belly Syndrome. It's not to fault them. It just means they have no experience with them. So find somebody who does have experience with Prune Belly Syndrome. I am blessed. I speak from a standpoint of somebody who lived 35 miles south of one of the biggest medical meccas in the world, Boston, right? So I understand that if you live in the middle of Kansas, you might have to, or wherever you live, or Alaska, you might have to drive 3 or 4 hours to go find a clinician that actually has experience with Prune Belly Syndrome. And I would say to that person, if you're worried about that or thinking about whether it's worth it, think about what that means to your child. Being able to connect with a clinician who actually has experience with Prune Belly Syndrome patients, has a long experience with Prune Belly Syndrome patients would be even better, and knows how to deal with those symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to that, I actually had a doctor on, and he said the doctors who would know most about Prune Belly Syndrome in his experience specialty-wise would be either a pediatric urologist or a pediatric nephrologist.
Right.
And I'm assuming that's because kidney problems and urinary problems are very common with Prune Belly Syndrome, correct?
Yes, they are. And it also assumes that a lot of folks with Prune Belly Syndrome don't make it to adulthood.
Yeah.
Right. But now that a lot of us are, as science progresses, as the medical field progresses, as all of these diagnostic tools during pregnancy progress, and I would say surgical procedures during pregnancy as well, things that can be done to a fetus in utero that will help to mitigate the symptoms of the child after they're born. These things are really, really important. And so I think I've lost you, Michael. Are you back?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Just a poor internet connection.
I understand. So I'm not sure where I was, but yeah, we can go on.
All right. So I think that's just about, I think there's about one more question. If anyone had questions for you about your story or anything you said, would you be willing to come back on and answer those questions?
Of course.
And is there anything you would like to add before we sign off?
Just a thank you to you, Michael, again for picking up this torch and carrying this kind of awareness on. This is so important. I think in 2007, when we made those DVDs, we tried to propagate them out to various pediatric hospitals throughout the country, just to gain awareness so that the urologist and urology and nephrology departments in these hospitals would have the DVD to be able to watch themselves, as well as to give patients, to loan out to patients and parents who are struggling with PBS. I love that you're doing this on YouTube now, and so it's of course available to anybody. They don't need a DVD, you just need a link. So I think that's great. So thank you to you. And also thank you to my PBS community. Over the last 25 years, it's been really, really, I cannot express in words how profoundly life-changing it has been to have this community in my life, to know that I'm not alone, to know that there are people who are also struggling with the things that I'm struggling with, that if I have any questions for my personal life or for my clinicians, if people have been dealing with the same types of things, to be able to learn what some of those things are before I go to the hospital or before I go to the doctor. So important. So thank you to my PBS community. I am so, it's really astounding to me and Frank and others. When I think back, the original group, I think were 30 or 40 people. And now if you look at Prune Belly Syndrome, as far as from a social media standpoint, we're on 5 continents, and there's somewhere around 12,000 people connected to the Prune Belly Syndrome network. That is such a tremendous blessing to all of us, because the more people that connect, the more knowledge we have and the more awareness we can share with the world. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me on today. And yes, if there's anything that anybody has any questions about regarding pregnancy, or what was it like growing up with it, or what were my limitations, or questions from my mother as well, who, God bless, is still with us, and she's 82 years old. And yeah, reach out to me via email or text message, or however it is that you would like to do that. Facebook.
Thanks, Frank. Oh, shoot, I am so sorry.
That's all right. We're like only separated by like a week, I think. He's like a week younger than I am, or something like that.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and we have the same last name. Yeah.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Kurt.
All right.
All right. But yeah, that's amazing. And I just want to let you know, doing this channel has been absolutely amazing and definitely eye-opening, seeing all the stories.
Yes.
Because to be honest, I didn't think, before I met the network, I didn't think that many people made it.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that, like I said, the statistics, they're scary when you look at just the statistics and not the stories behind the ones who are surviving.
That's right.
So I want to thank you for coming on. And to the viewers, I want to thank you guys for watching, and everyone who's helped me so far up to this point. I want to thank you. You guys are helping make this channel possible. Let's share this and get the Prune Belly awareness out there, and see if we can make this a very well-known thing, hopefully.
Yes.
If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.
For a long time, I seemed unique from a very early age, asking why, feeling weak, living within a cage, wondering if I am the only one.
What was I supposed to make of my limitations? How much more should I take of this situation? Can it be I am the only one?
The only one. The only one.
All throughout, I found out what love's about, leaving the drive, not deprived. Feel alive.
Do you know how it feels to be different? At times you think you are the only one who exists with the pain of not being the same. When you got brothers and sisters that don't share the same last name or share the same blood, but share the same battle. Some days are real good, some days are just a hassle. Operations to doctor visits, you are not alone. So I wrote this to let you know you don't have to be alone.
The only one.
You don't have to be
The
alone.
only one.
You don't have to be alone.
These days, there are ways through the haze to sing his praise. We gather here, with prayers held dear, wanting to erase all pain, death, and fear. Lord, please help them see. No one seems to have heard just how this came to be. We need to spread the word.
Show the world I'm not the only one. No, no. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For this community. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For the thread we share. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For this unity. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For the power of care. Thank you,
The
Lord.
Prune Belly Syndrome Network is a volunteer organization devoted to patient support and education of the medical community about this rare condition.
1 in 40,000 live births result in Prune Belly Syndrome, and all of them have all or some of their abdominal muscles missing.
50% will not survive their second birthday.
Our goal is to change the medical profession's perception of Prune Belly Syndrome as a hopeless condition
and to educate and promote an interest among the community to do further research into the causes of the syndrome
and more effective treatments.
www.prunebelly.org.
You can help.
Thank you, Lord. For this community. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For the thread we share. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For this unity. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. For the power of care. Thank you, Lord, for showing me I'm not the only one.
If you don't know what Prune Belly is, please go to www.prunebelly.org